I've worked at some of the top tier law firms. Then I did my master's here from Harvard Law. And after that, qualified the New York bar and then joined a US law firm in London.
Just to jump ahead for the viewers, so you're talking about the self-doubt. You are a software engineer now, so this story ends really well. But this was we talking a few years ago, right? So you are a software engineer now. Welcome to Easier Said Than Done with me, Zubin Pratap, where I share with you my journey from 37-year-old lawyer to professional software engineer. The goal of this podcast is to show you how to actually do those things that are easier said than done. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Easier Said Than Done podcast. And I've got Pallavi today, a student of mine from a few years ago, who's been through more than her fair share of, let's just call them challenges and problems. But through it all, she has persevered and she has succeeded and she's found her way. She was a very successful lawyer and made the transition. So similar to my sort of background in that sense, but it wasn't easy. It never is. And the reason I bring people like Pallavi onto the podcast is because I want you guys to understand that the end result is not just a magical overnight thing. It comes after a lot of struggle, a lot of trial and error. And most people succeed when they get the right kind of help or assistance or have the right kind of people around them. So, Pallavi, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Just dig into your background a little bit, and then we'll start discussing your journey a bit more.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Ruben. Happy to be here. So, okay, let's begin from okay. So, I have been a lawyer for almost more than half a decade. And it was in 2022 that I first kind of decided to want to transition. And yeah, I didn't know what to do, where to start from. Sounded like a crazy idea back then. And
And
fast.
just to jump in there, sorry, Pallavi, I don't mean to interrupt, but just to jump in there, I want people to understand you were a lawyer. You'd been educated in India like me, but you were working at a top tier law firm in the UK. So you had pretty much reached, in legal senses, the pinnacle of the career path. Like that is the dream path, right? So it was a big decision to want to change that. But anyway, keep going with your story.
Yes. So I've worked at some of the top tier law firms in India. And then I did my master's here from Harvard Law. And after that, qualified the New York bar and then joined a US law firm in London.
Yep,
So,
there you go. That's
but then,
not an easy thing to turn your back on.
yes, yes. So it wasn't easy to kind of let everything go and kind of want to reinvent myself. A lot of challenges, I had been facing a lot of difficult things on the personal front. And I think that
Mhm,
is what changed my perspective towards life. And I wanted
mhm.
to kind of relook at my choices, my priorities. I had to
What
undergo.
What is difficult about doing that, Pallavi? Sorry to just sort of go into a philosophical tangent because so many students, you've met a few of them in the program, they come to me because, they wake up one day, typically in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're like, is
Mhm.
this the path I want to keep going on? What does this
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
it's a very confronting moment. I remember that moment so clearly back in, for me, it was 2011, 2012, now 14 years ago, 15 years, 13 years ago. W- Tell me about, and I know the circumstances, we don't want to dive into them too deep because they're very personal. I get that. But tell me about emotionally what that was like for you when you woke up one morning and said, hey, do I want to keep doing this? I've invested 10, by this time, you've invested 10 years of your life in learning to be, learning, going to law school, and then probably more with the masters and all that.
Mhm.
What does that feel like? And what does that sense of fear and doubt feel like when you suddenly wake up in morning and you're like, "Hang on, is this the path for me? What am I doing?" Tell us about that.
I think there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of self doubt. It's I remember like I was stressed. I wasn't able to sleep. I knew I wanted to go into tech, but then the very thought of it seemed like an impossible idea. And
It
it just
really
felt
does.
late in life, you know?
Yeah.
I
And
could
and
not.
just to jump ahead for the viewers, you are a software engineer now. So this story ends really well. But this was we talking a few years ago, right? So you are a software engineer now. But okay, so you're talking about the self doubt. Please go on.
Yeah, so I remember the idea first coming into my mind when I was in working in London, and
Mhm.
I didn't know what to do, where to start from. I thought it's impossible, and I was scared, of course.
Of course.
And that's when I found you.
Hi, if you want a no BS insight into how to change your career, whether to code or something else, and how to actually get job opportunities in tech, then please subscribe and like. It's no BS because I have zero incentive to mislead you. I just want to help you and give you tons of value so that you will consider working with me to get to your next career. Take a look at the description text below to learn more about the training I offer. But I do post content here regularly, and by subscribing and liking and hitting that notification bell, you will get to know when I post new industry insights for you. You'll also know within about 3 seconds if you want to learn more, but at least you won't miss out. Oh, and please follow me on LinkedIn too. I pretty much post there every single day. Just look for my name, Zubin Pratap. All right, so please like and subscribe to this channel, and let's get back to the episode.
I didn't know what to do, where to start from. I thought it's impossible and I was scared. And that kind of changed how I viewed the entire challenge of, transitioning my career, because speaking to you made me realize that, okay, it is possible. It's not an impossible thing to do. Of course, not easy. But that is what gave me hope that, okay, I can do this. And I think along the way, just having great people around you, a support system, a great mentor. I think that is what really helped me be reach my goal. So
100%. And, obviously, we've sort of shorthanded the whole thing in that description because it took a few years for you because you had some health setbacks and other things. So you had to pause, and then you ended up moving to California to be with your husband because he's a FANG big tech engineer. So,
mhm,
of course, lots of people are going to say, oh, then Pallavi had it easy because her partner's a FANG big tech engineer. But that's not how the real world works. It is easier than not having that for sure. It is an advantage, but also, hey, you have, some health conditions. You were leaving a giant successful career. You were moving across the Atlantic. You were
mhm.
starting over. Other people don't have those problems, so you have advantages, you have problems. So that's a big jump for you. Tell me about, I don't actually remember this. You may have told me this in the past, but tell me about how you came to find out about me, because often we think things are impossible until we find one person who's done it, right?
Yes.
But it still takes some guts to say, if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. You'd be surprised how many people say, well, oh, they got lucky, instead of
Mhm.
saying, hang on, if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. So remind me again how you found me and what gave you the courage to say, okay, I'm going to reach out to Zubin and we're going to see if we can make this happen. What was going through your head at that point in time?
I think at that point, it was a hard phase in life. I was still recovering from my open heart surgery.
Hmm.
And then I was in London at my dream job.
Yeah. Yes.
And then, the thought of wanting to go into software. I remember there were a lot of sleepless nights. And after, yeah, I found you on LinkedIn. And I remember sending out that message and I was very skeptical. I was hesitant. I'm not great at networking and stuff. So I think I was hesitant at first, but then yeah, you replied immediately. And that's how like
Yeah. Yeah. LinkedIn thing, I remember a link, a lot of the crappier messages like, hi, bro, or hey, can you help me? Like people just start like that, I think yours was a very thoughtful message, which is why I would have bothered, to reply, because obviously, you get hundreds of these messages and you're a very thoughtful person. Okay. So Pallavi, you're a software engineer now, and I want to sort of get you to talk Pallavi from 2022, right? So Pallavi from 2025 gets to coach Pallavi from 2022, because there are lots of people who are going to be listening who are in your shoes, or are in the same shoes you were in 3 years ago.
Mhm.
What's the hardest thing about career change?
I think the hardest thing is sticking to, there are a lot of comments that will come from people around you, and your
Yeah.
head will go in the direction where you want to compare yourself to others. So the
Yeah.
hardest thing is to be clear as to why you're doing it,
Yeah.
and to be true to that.
Yeah.
Just, having
Especially
that.
when you've got a successful career, it's a different thing when you're 22, 23, starting out. Your opportunity cost, what you're giving up, is lower.
Yeah.
It's much lower when you already climbed the ladder a bit and you're very successful. You're at the apex, like you were in some of the best law firms in the world. To give something like that up takes a lot of courage, right? And then people are going, everyone, especially family, they're going to be like, are you crazy? You worked all your life for this. Like, this is your dream job. You just said it. Why are you turning your back on that? And it's so hard. So, would you say, in a very real sense, handling that mindset and emotional state is at least as hard, if not harder, than just coding?
It is definitely harder. Like,
Why? To help people understand this, because no one believes me when I tell them this until they go through it. Just help people understand this.
I just feel, see, I'm not saying coding is easy, but then it's
No.
like any other skill, it's learnable, right?
Yes.
But I think having the mindset to go through things that are difficult, that kind of challenge who you are, who you have been, and
Yeah.
kind of, challenge everything you've learned so far, kind of unlearning everything, learning again. That's the hard bit because you can't, there's no formula to it. You can't just learn it
Yeah.
and be done with it. It's
Yeah.
it's a process, it's a lifelong process.
It's a
And
lifelong process. Exactly. Yeah.
even now, I would say it's not like I have, now that I am a software engineer, it's still challenging. I think that's something that I'm going to be learning all my life.
It never changes. In fact, I had another one of my students who's, had a massive success recently, arose on one of the other episodes. It'll come out in a couple of days, I think. And she said the same thing. She said, look, it she's actually been an engineer for a little while, and then she came to the program because she was like, she felt stuck. She felt like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, why would an engineer come to the program? I asked her this on the show, and she's like, well, people think, oh, once you learn to code, it just magically falls in place. She's like, no, it just gets harder and harder in a good way. But you realize the game, you have to level up at the game, right? And it's a lifelong thing. Every next level has a bunch of challenges, which is why you'll remember from the program that I don't talk about jobs except for the first one, right? I
Yes.
keep talking about the career. I'm like, think about your career over the next 20, 30 years. That's the thing that you're playing for, right? So, I'm glad you're talking about that mindset stuff. And I do remember, Pallavi, when I was making the transition, right? I was 37 and learning to code. And, I was getting ready for partnership and stuff. That was the level I was at legally. I'd moved into business roles for a little while as well. And I remember speaking to a bunch of my classmates from, law school, and
Mhm.
all of them were partners, doing really well, and all of that. And every single one of them said, Zubin, are you crazy? You've been a lawyer for 15 years. You've been training for the law for 20, right? So that's when you started law school 20 years ago. Why would you do something like this? And you're doing well. Like, it's not like there's a problem. And I spent so many nights, Pallavi, just beating myself up, thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be happy with what I've got? I've got the dream career. Is there something wrong with me? Am I being a bit of an asshole? Am I being ungrateful? Like, what's going on? But there was that drive inside me, that desire inside me, right? Like, and it's not something I could necessarily ignore. It was there. And here's the kicker: when I got my first dev role, people thought, oh, okay, it's he's basically gone backwards, because I took a massive pay cut for my first
Mhm.
developer job, compared to the lawyer salary, obviously. Then when I got into Google, one of those friends of mine who was a partner called me up and said, hey, can you help me do that?
Mhm.
Right. And I'm like, I thought you gave me a lecture 2 years ago about how I'm doing a stupid thing. He's like, yeah, but I'm thinking maybe I want to do this too. And I'm like, to be honest, I'm not sure that you actually want to be a software engineer. I think you're just miserable being a lawyer. There's a difference.
Mhm.
You're trying to run away from something as opposed to go towards something. So, tell us about some of the setbacks that not just the health stuff. Let's talk about the learning setbacks. Tell us about the experience about learning to code, because people think that that's the only bit that matters, right? And you found out after you learned to code, there's still a lot more, many steps that we cover in the program. But describe how hard it was for you, for someone with zero tech background, and now you're an engineer. How hard it was to persist through those dark months. It's not days, it's months. Talk about your experience, your learnings, what you tell other people.
So I remember Zubin from your program, and that thing, like, it stuck with me that there is a difference between learning how to code and being a professional software developer.
Would you agree with that now that you are a professional software engineer?
Yes, yes.
Mhm,
Coding is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot more
mhm,
to it. So
mhm,
I feel, yeah, everything in itself has been a challenge. First, it's about learning how to code, then what language to start from, what to
mhm.
do, what kind of engineer do I want to be. You know,
Right.
a bunch of questions and way too much information on the internet.
And the
So
internet is a sewage, so it's too much. Yeah.
yeah, and that's right. Like you really helped me out to kind of figure out where to begin my journey from, and yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it was like I was at sea. I didn't know where to start from,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I think learning. how to code is like, okay, developing a skill, but then having the skill that people would pay you for to make yourself marketable and get yourself hired. I
It's a
think that's
different level.
a kind of mountain to
Totally,
cross.
which is why we spend so much time on market development in the program, is because just because you know how to cook doesn't make you a chef. There's so many steps you've got to go through.
Yeah. I think
So so sorry, go on.
so I think the program really, and I was aware of these things right from the beginning because I was a part of the program. So I knew what I was getting myself into. Versus, I'm sure like there are a lot of people who are under the false belief that once you learn how to code, that's it.
Pretty
So
much 100% of
I'm
people
grateful
start
I'm
nowhere. Yeah.
grateful for that, to you for that I had that visibility right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
And having the right expectations means you can then build the right plan. You
yeah,
can't make a plan if your expectations are wrong. If your assumptions are wrong, that's fatal to the plan. It's a pretty serious problem. And that's why we spend 12 months, is because these things take time, especially when you're starting from zero, right? Especially when you're starting from zero. So now tell us a little bit about, because, and I want you to talk about this. You finished the program, you had to take some time off, I think it was well over a year. Then you ended up moving to San Francisco. You weren't working full time, I think, in the law at that point in time, or maybe you weren't working at all. There were all these big life changes that you were doing. And so you decided, okay, you've lost a bit of momentum because you finished the program and then the health things happened. And so you said, okay, I'm going to go back and revise and go hard into a full time boot camp because, you'd already learned a bunch of things in the program, but then it had been a while and you had let those skills drop off a bit. You went into a program, and now you're a software engineer. So tell us about the difference in your experience, because boot camps are very useful if people can go full time, have the money for it, and just do it like intensively, right? But tell
yes.
us the difference, and you don't have to sort of. I'm not doing this shill one way or the other. Just you've done both. Most
Mm,
students, you've done it the other way around. Most students come into the program after a boot camp. You
mm.
then ended up, because of your personal circumstances, you ended up doing a boot camp a couple of years after the program. But tell people about, when should someone choose a boot camp? When should someone choose a personalized coaching program? Because it's different for everybody. There's no one size fits all, right? You've done both. Tell people what the difference is, and when, if you had to help someone make the choice, when should they go for one over the other, and how to approach that analysis.
Right. So I think for me, because I had done the program, so after the program, I took some break to kind of recover and be good health wise. But
Mhm.
then I think my foundation was already built in terms of knowing, being very clear about what I wanted to do, why I wanted
Mhm.
to do it, what what language. I think that base was already built because of the program, where I knew I knew what challenges should be expected and everything.
Yeah.
So
Just remind me again, did you actually, because you did end up having to leave the program because of the health stuff, did you
yeah,
end up finishing your entire coding plan at that point of time, or you did because of the health things?
I finished phase 1 of, yeah.
Okay, so
I
because
finished
I
doing
think
I
I've
finished
given you three
completing,
phases.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you only
By
finished
that
phase one. Okay. Hmm.
by that time I had finished phase 1. So
Hmm.
I think I was in a good place to be able to choose the boot camp
Correct.
that
Correct.
otherwise it's I think had I begun from there, I don't think I would have
Do you
been
remember why you didn't get to phase two and phase three? Was it because of the life disruptions, or was it something else?
yeah.
Yeah, it was. So that's what happened. Okay. All right. So it's hard for you then to really, because most people, it's hard for you because phase two and phase three is when you get professional level skills, right? Phase one is just foundational literacy. So it's hard for you to compare. But as best you can, what would you say is the, when should someone choose a boot camp versus a personal coaching, or vice versa? Like, now that you know and you're in the industry and you were mentoring somebody,
Yeah.
with whatever the circumstances are, how would you advise them to make that choice?
I think I would always, looking back, I think coaching is definitely better than a boot camp because in a boot camp, you're just thrown into this intensive, 3-month period where you have to learn on your own. You have to learn things very quickly, very fast, and it's a standard approach for everyone. And
Right.
everyone's needs are very different. So
What do you mean by that?
basically, I might want to, somebody might want to do full stack, somebody might want to do
Mhm.
back end, somebody might,
Mhm.
and everyone's learning style is different.
Totally different. Yeah. That's why
So
I give you guys all a customized plan. That I have to
yes,
study your learning style. Yeah.
yes. So everyone's learning style is different. So
Mhm.
yeah, if you're given a plan that caters to you, what
Mhm,
you want to do and how you want to do it based on, your strengths, your weaknesses, things like
mhm,
that, I think the there's a greater probability of you being successful in the end
mhm,
rather than
mhm.
having that
Cookie
cookie
cutter sort of one
cutter
size. Yeah, rest. Yeah.
approach.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I think for me, the boot camp was a great learning experience, but then that was against the backdrop of having done a lot of work before through the
Yeah,
program.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it helped me kind of get the structure. And by that time, I knew that, okay, getting that structure would be good for me. And I needed that. I think I was fully remote. I was in a new country, didn't know anybody.
Right.
So that kind of interaction was needed for me at that point in time. Um,
Right. And so now fully remote's an interesting thing. So you've obviously become, you're a fully remote software engineer. Tell us about the challenges after learning to code and getting interviews, because that's a really hard phase where a lot of people fail, where you've got the basic skills, but you don't know whether it's good enough for the market yet. You need to have some feedback loops closed out before you know that. Tell us about that phase in your journey.
I think, of course, so there's the technical aspect to it, where you build your CV from scratch, you have your
Yeah.
GitHub profile, those things. But I think the hardest thing that actually comes in is, I think, the rejections.
Oh, it's so hard. Yeah. We talked
And
about it just in that other podcast too. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think, yeah, it's for me, I was prepared for that phase because of the program. Otherwise, I think
Because of the bootcamp or because of my program?
your program.
Okay, because we
Yeah.
do spend a lot of time preparing people for that. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that was the phase where, it gets really difficult because you don't have a degree, you don't have experience,
Right.
and to be able to market yourself and to get hired. But I remember one thing that you said from your program is that out of those hundred people, you need to find that one person who believes in you.
And that's true in a down market. Like right now, we've got 5 of the students interviewing in a down market, right?
Mhm,
And I only work with what, like 10, 12, 15 people at a time. Right. So, a full 30% have reached the end of phase 3, or some of them have 4 phases, depending on the plan that I built for them. And they're interviewing now. And this is in a down market. And I keep telling them, guys, even in a down market, there's 250,000 jobs open in the US alone.
mhm,
You need one. Okay. So even in a down market, there's enough opportunity. And if you're in the top 20%, in any market, you will have opportunities if you're in the top 20%. But you
mhm,
have to get to the top 20%.
mhm.
And that's not possible in 3 months. It's just not.
Yes.
Right.
So,
So, okay, keep going. I think you're saying more about,
yeah,
sorry.
being ready for a lot of rejections, not having that mindset to just keep going despite
Right. Yeah.
everything. And I think also things like building how to market yourself, having a very clear narrative for yourself. So these are
Yes.
things that no boot camp will really teach you those things. So these are things that I had gotten from the program, which kind of
Mhm.
helped me through that phase of.
How would you say that bit helps? Like people don't realize how important it is to have the right narrative,
Mm,
because
mm,
all recruiters and hiring managers in tech are going to be looking at you and saying, "I don't know, you're really risky, by the way. Like you've got zero background in this. Like why are you here? Why are we spending time talking to you?" So why is it so important to prepare the answers, to have the mental, emotional, and intellectual preparation for that phase of the journey? In your experience, from your direct experience, why do you think that's so important?
I think it's important to kind of de-risk yourself in the eyes of others.
Hmm.
And there's a method to everything. Like you have to be very clear about why you're doing this, what is your story. Because if
Hmm.
if you are not convinced, you cannot convince others, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think set and everything is what helped me.
With the rejections, because what happens in a rejection is somebody else's opinion is that, look, I don't think you're good enough for this role. That's the opinion. That's what happens in a rejection. And you have to say, I can see why you say that, but I don't think that's true. That's why I'm going to try again. That's
Mhm,
actually what has to go through your head, right? And again, we spend time on this in the program where I talk about, if in a given environment, if the hiring manager is more certain that you're not right, then you are certain that you can be the right person. It's a battle of certainty. It's not a battle of skill at that point in time. It's a battle of certainty. And whoever's most certain in that environment will win,
mhm,
right? But you can't fake that certainty. People can't think faking till you're making it is a real thing. It's not a real thing. You can only have that certainty when you've done the work and you
Yes.
know that, okay, on the day I may miss the shot on the goal. That's
Mhm.
fine. But on the whole, I'm a good enough player that I'll get most shots on the goal. Right.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's the answer. That ends up being the answer. Right. So, it's amazing that you sort of took all that so seriously to heart because you started from a position of, like I said, it was a big jump for you. And so the anxiety is proportionate to the size of the jump. So you had all that. Plus, you were in a new country and all that. Tell me about what it's like to actually be an engineer and how that changed or how that's different from
Mhm.
your expectations when you were fantasizing about being an engineer because it's a different experience, right?
Yeah.
Share some insight on that. What is it like on the inside, Pallavi?
So I'm loving being where I am right now, getting to getting to get as I'm working at a startup, so getting my hands dirty with a lot of things, a lot of learning. It's a very steep curve, learning curve for me. I think fantasizing wise, you kind of fantasize that things will not. You kind of expect things to happen sooner. So
Every time,
and
yeah.
and you kind of like picture yourself working on everything that's fancy, everything
Yeah.
that is I think that is not the case. Sometimes you're stuck with a problem for days, just
Yes,
debugging.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and once you get it, once you're able to solve something, the feeling that you get after being stuck for days is, I think that's what makes it worth it. So
100. That's why we stay addicted. It's that weird, unpredictable reward system after being
mm,
stuck for days. It's like Stockholm syndrome, right? You hate everything about code while you're stuck. And the moment you make that breakthrough, you're suddenly like, oh, I love this. This is the best thing ever. Like it's this endless abusive relationship with the compiler, right? It's just so awkward. But yeah, you've described it absolutely correctly. That's the reality of it on the inside. And people think writing code is about hello world or create next app and everything starts that way. But no, when you walk in like, when you walked into your startup, were you were you the first person to write code, or was there already a lot of code written?
there was a lot of code already
And
written.
that's
So
totally different from how we do it in
yeah.
tutorials, right? It's a totally different experience.
Yes. So,
Right.
yeah, being able to go through somebody else's code, or even things like, a lot of things are about trade-offs,
That's
which is
engineering.
interesting because I feel like at some level it is similar to law,
Very
where
similar. Yeah.
you break down the problem and then there's no one right answer, but it's about what's the best answer for your use case. So
Correct.
yeah, it's
It's exactly that's what I keep telling people. It all structured thinking is like that because most of life is not a simple binary problem of right or wrong. Most of life isn't like that, right? Even things like should you have children is not a binary question of right or wrong. Should I get a dog? Not a binary question. Should I buy this car or that car? None of these are binary questions. Life is not binary in that sense, right? And same thing with engineering is while the compiler may work in ones and zeros, the decisions about what should be compiled is a spectrum of trade-offs. And exactly the same thing in the law. What's right for the client, what's right by the regulation, how do you balance these competing commercial interests and the legal requirements?
Mhm.
Very hard questions. It's the same thing with software engineering. Yeah, and it's that's actually what makes engineering different from just coding is writing the code. Engineering is thinking about what code needs to be written, you
yes,
know and it's
exactly.
it's a fundamentally different skill, right?
Yes, in a better way. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so and that comes from experience from being on the inside and knowing that, oh, normally I would have written this, but then some of the more experienced engineers said, yeah, but have you thought about that? And I hadn't thought about that, and now that changes my answer. And it's such fun to realize it's not about the writing of the code. That even the AI can do these days, right? It's about
Yeah.
which code deserves to be written, which code should not be written, and so on. So look, your journey has been a real inspiration. I'm so proud of your courage. You kept going, you kept going, you kept going. You're never afraid to ask for help. You took so many punches on the chin and you kept getting up and and I've said this on every episode where I've had a student, in this episode, in this podcast. Honestly, the difference between those that succeed and those that don't is quite simply they wanted badly enough to try again. That is it. That is the difference. They wanted badly to keep trying, with through all the rejection. So if you were to tell people listening, what if you were to coach somebody right now who's at a position where they've been trying for a little while, but they're not getting any success, They're trying to do it on their own. They're flying blind. They're overwhelmed by social media and the internet. How would you coach somebody in that stuck position? They've been trying for a while, learned a bit of code, but not made any progress. To that person, what would you say?
I think of course to not not quit unless they have a very good reason to.
Yes, exactly.
Uh, so just not quit because of the fear of what's going to happen. Because usually, if you're doing the work, success is just around the corner, and
It's true.
you
It's
just
true.
have to be at it. So
And speaking of doing the work, how would you advise people to figure out what work should be done? Like what's, especially if they're figuring it out for themselves. How do you figure this out on yourself? Or is there a better way? What should people be doing to solve the problem of getting the skills required to change career? Because it's a huge problem.
I think getting the skills is to be able to find the right program for you, find the right people to support you, find a mentor who's willing to put in the work, who's willing to, be there for you when you need answers. And luckily, I found that in you, Zubin. And not everyone is lucky to find such a mentor. And I think,
Or to be able to afford something like that, right? Like, and there's a large number of people out there who can't afford something like that. So, what would you say to them if they had to figure it out for themselves? What
yeah.
principles or rules would you come up with? For example, one of the things I tell people is ignore social media except for two people. Ignore everybody else because you'll find that we're all saying pretty much the same thing.
Mhm.
There are only so many ways to skin this cat, right? We're all saying more or less the same thing. But rather than listen to everybody in the internet and jump around, just listen to your two most favorite people. That's it. And tune out everybody else and do what those two people tell you to do. Just do it. Right. That's one of my rules. What rules do you have for people who can't afford boot camps, mentorships, whatever it is, who are trying to figure this out in their own?
I think to have a plan in place, and if
Mhm.
something is not working out, to reevaluate and to kind of think of an alternative, to try to analyze why things are not working, and
Mhm.
to keep the self reflecting as to knowing yourself as to what is going wrong, because nobody can tell you what's not working. It's only
Correct.
you who can figure that out, right?
Correct.
Being very transparent, not lying to yourself, basically.
Good.
It's
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
sometimes to ignore what's happening and to just restart, but it takes courage to kind of be truthful to yourself and know
Hey, this is not
why things.
working. Yeah.
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 If it's not working, not just quit. If it's not working out, not the answer is not to quit. The answer is to find another way that will
To
work.
intelligently modify your approach.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, you one of the things you mentioned that is quite important because when people have to figure out what to do next, they typically turn to the internet.
Mhm.
What would you say about that? Like pros and cons, be careful of, etc.
I think the internet is a good place to know what all is out there, but then it's not a good place to tell you that this is something that will work for you.
Hmm.
So if you want to just have another perspective, have everything that's out there, go ahead, do it. But then to know what will work for you, I think you need to know yourself, you need to know your priorities. I think, yeah, like things that you want in life.
Yeah. And also I feel like the person's context matters. I don't know why people don't think of this enough. How old are you? How much free time do you have outside of work? Do you have family who are dependent on you? Do you have health issues? Do you have kids? All of these things impact enormously, but no one thinks about, like, we spend so much time doing time audits and stuff in the program so that we understand how your time is used. What are the big categories of things that are priorities? What are the things you're spending time on that are not priorities? We have to audit all of this, right? And people just, and I genuinely think, fairly or unfairly, it is harder for parents. It just is. It's
Mm.
also harder for people with high responsibility jobs, you know but as a woman, and I know you're not a parent yet, but as a woman, do you think, what has your experience been as a woman in this space? Do you think it's been particularly different? Are there unique challenges that women face that women should think about? What is your perspective and advice to women out there?
I think it is definitely not yeah, like you face different kind of challenges because of your gender, not just in your profession, maybe just generally
Sure.
in the society you live in, family, everything.
Yeah,
But then,
culture, like different cultures have different pressures on women, right? Yeah.
yes. So for me, I think I have been lucky enough to not really kind of be in a situation where I'm made to feel kind of different because of my gender. But then yeah, there are certain like where subtle nuances to it that you have to navigate in everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being, I think it is just about not not being scared to get your voice out there.
That I genuinely believe that's the key of it. I don't know whether you remember, Pallavi, but when you, Violetta, and others were in the program, I used to say, I
Mm,
don't know why it is, but anecdotally, in my experience as a hiring manager, not just in tech, but women don't speak up for themselves enough. They won't ask for the raise, they won't negotiate the salary as much, etc. And that's largely cultural, I think. I don't know. I can't speak because it's a woman, but I guess it's cultural for different people, or social. And interestingly, Aline Lerner, she's the founder of interviewing.io, she's an ex-engineer turned recruiter. You probably know of her in the interviewing.io sort of world online. She does a lot of big tech interview training. She's phenomenal, right? So I've had her on the show, and she's the only person on earth who's got this kind of data, because she's done more than 33,000 mock interviews with FANG engineers doing the interview and aspiring FANG engineers taking the interview, right? So both sides, and it's all anonymized, right? And she did this brilliant experiment where she sort of denoised the data, took away the gender from the voice in the recorded interviews, so neutralized you could tell what gender the person is from the voice, and did an analysis across the interviews, and found that women typically quit after the first rejection,
mm,
and men will only quit after the sixth or seventh, right? And she said it's actually not that at least from the data she has, it's not like interviewers are biased against women. It's that women, and she's a woman, and she's like, women are more likely to not try than men after
okay.
the first few rejections, right?
Mm,
Which is huge as a piece of data, because automatically she said when women tried more than 2 or 3 times, the gender differential disappeared.
okay. Mhm,
Right, which is really fast. Now she's got the data. She's got so much data on this, and she's a woman saying, "I know this is going to be controversial. I'm just telling you what the data says."
mm.
Does that what does that ring true for you as a woman, that sometimes you hold yourself back, and it appears the men don't as much? Do you feel that's true for you personally?
So at least I would say yes to some extent. Maybe it's a part of just your conditioning, or I don't know where it comes from. Yeah.
And do you find on the job it makes much of a difference? Now that you're inside, once you made it past the interviews and you're in on the job, are you finding it makes does it seem to be an issue or not even an issue? Does it seem to be a difference of any sort? Does anyone care, especially when you're remote?
No, no, none, not really.
Yeah. And that's
But
what I found. Sorry, go on.
but I think it's important to kind of find a workplace that has a culture that kind of doesn't propagate those kind of
Ri Yeah.
biases.
I mean, to
Um,
be honest, finding a culture that's good is important for men and for women. Like, you could have a culture of bullying, you could have a culture of toxic masculinity, you'd have a culture of toxic femininity. You could have all sorts of stupid
yeah.
cultures, subcultures out there, right? And you
So
have to do the homework. Yeah.
so you have to do the homework.
Yeah.
And
Is
so
the short answer. People are complicated. People are complicated. Compilers are so much easier. So much easier. Anyway, look, Pallavi, thank you for your time. Thank you for your generous thoughts. Congratulations once again on your ongoing success. As I tell most of my students who get to this phase, this is the beginning. You're restarting your career. It takes a lot of courage to do that. You've already got, a successful dev job at the moment. You're growing a lot already it's early days, and you've already spotted the difference between knowing how to code and actually engineering, the difference between, that this is the beginning for you. You've got tremendous opportunity. You're in a hotbed of opportunity, being in the Bay Area. And I look forward to a tremendous career ahead of you. I'm always here for you. You always have me on WhatsApp anytime, anything you need. And especially if you're sending me pictures of Luna the dog, I'll be very happy to respond to anything you have to ask, anytime, any place. But thank you for taking the time to be on the show. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. So thank you.
thank you. It was lovely having this conversation with you. I
It's
thoroughly
always a
enjoyed it.
pleasure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm with you. No, it's an absolute
And
pleasure, Barry. It's a pleasure.
thank you for the role you've played in my career transition. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm grateful I get to work with people like you. It's the biggest joy when people like you actually stick with it long enough to get the results. You've had more than your fair share of battles. So, it took you a while, but you just refused to quit. So kudos to you. I did very little other than walk with you along some parts of the journey. you had to actually climb that mountain, so it really all credit goes to you, Pallavi. But look, thanks for your time again, and I'll see you next time. I'm sure in a few months or maybe in a year or so. I'm sure you'll have more adventures to share, and I'll see you then. So thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
Do it. Just subscribe. You know you got to do it.
Hey, hope you're enjoying this episode. Listen, I bet you're tired of the social media BS, you're confused and overwhelmed, and all you want is for someone to just show you a clear path to a coding career, right? We get it. My partner and I, we changed to code in our 30s, and we can help you do it too. Brian and I have done all sorts of engineering work from startups to Google, and now we've built an exclusive private mentorship program designed to get you from beginner to professional developer. Whether you've done a coding bootcamp, you have a computer science degree, or you're starting from zero, it doesn't matter. We'll build you a step-by-step and customized plan, not just for the coding stuff, but for the entire career change process. Look, I'll be honest, the program is not easy and it's not short. But if you do the work, you'll get results that will change your life, if that's what you want. So go to any of the links in the show notes and you can schedule a free call with us. Speak to you then.